goes for goal and finishes off the PSG victory.
Nuno Mendes est lancé, Nuno Mendes va vite, Nuno Mendes passe devant Quadrado, le tir, oh il est beau celui-là, le but de Nuno Mendes.
You know the football, it is what it is.
Le premier but de Ronald Colomboigny avec le Paris Saint-Germain, quelle joie.
Hello and welcome to PSG Review, also known as the show that is not yet ending the season, but pretty much ending an era. Kylian Mbappé has said his goodbyes, announced his impending departure and thanked whoever he deemed worthy of thanking. Of course, not without any controversy. Controversy would follow him even if he did nothing controversial, and fair to say he couldn't formulate his words in such a way that no one would mind. People very much do mind, but he certainly also left the goal a little bit open also. But this neither is nor ever has been Kylian Mbappé, that much the man himself reminded us of 1 year ago or so. And it's true that while we have a look into his last actions in our colours, in as far as they've been acted by now, Coupe de France final still to play and few other league matches, we don't solely focus on his antics past or present. His future, well, that's none of my business anyways. I have no interest in the affairs of other clubs. In this show, we also talk about the curious gossip around Xavi Simons, and PSG women are in the league final. There's a new playoff format there this year. Toulouse came to the Parc, and some goodbyes there in that match, like I have already indicated. But let me take a small moment here on top of the show to pay a tribute to a very long-serving PSG person through and through, who has played his part in making Parc des Princes that special place that it is.
Et c'est vrai que le Parc des Princes est un monument de Paris. Et quel monument! Donc ce soir, je vous inviterai non pas à dresser un mur jaune, mais à dresser des murs rouges et bleus. Il y aura 4 murs ce soir. Et là, je parle des tribunes. Ce soir, il y aura Borelli, il y aura Paris, Auteuil ou Boulogne. 4 murs rouges et bleus.
Michel Montana, the master of the ceremonies, the host of Parc des Princes, the voice of this legendary stadium. He has been regular host of PSG home matches since 1998 and had already done his first work before that as early as 1994. The Toulouse match was his last before retirement, and he has hosted nearly 700 matches there. If you have ever been to Parc, you know him, his presence. There is a certain gravitas in his style which takes you back to old days perhaps, and up till now he has been inseparable with the match day atmosphere at Parc des Princes. Also the person who came up with the phrase "Ici c'est Paris," a different type of legend of the club. Enjoy the retirement, Michel.
Ici c'est! Merci à vous!
Who will follow him? I suggested on Twitter that it should be our media person and life and soul of PSG TV, Mbye Mbye Kylian, and she responded that not at all, but I don't think it would be a bad choice. I know it's a very different gig to what she does now, but she ticks the boxes such as being a huge fan of the club and also having tons of charisma. My name is Mikko, this is PSG Review, that much I've already told you, and you can follow the show online at PSG Review Pod on Twitter and at PSG Review on TikTok and Instagram. I promise you, I won't waste too much of your time by talking about the Toulouse match, an incredibly forgettable affair in Parisian Sunday night. That is the last night as I record on Monday. Yes, Kylian Mbappé was playing his last match at Parc in our colours, and that of course was noteworthy. More about him in a bit. We also said goodbye to Keylor Navas, who has been such an important player for us, even if not in the last couple of seasons. I'd go as far as saying that Keylor Navas is one of the most important players recruited in the last some years. Because without him, I doubt that we would have ever been in the Champions League final. The goalkeeping situation was not in order for so long before him. Some decent keepers there, but not quite the level that Navas had. Also, Layvin Kurzawa is pretty much ready to end his PSG career. I mean, he has been for a while, it seems, but worth to mention, nevertheless, he has been in Paris for a very long time. We have surprisingly long history together. I remember when he came as a big promise, and he was okay. He was pretty decent for some time, but I think his challenge always was his lapses in concentration, so he could do something really great and then something really quite decisively awful soon after. It was just always lacking that concentration and consistency. But fair play to him. He should have, of course, left a long time ago, but he didn't, so now he will. PSG basically went into this match with a very rotated squad. Not many usual starters, pretty much just Kylian Mbappé himself and Bradley Barcola. Arnau Tenas was in goal, and he actually provided the assist for our only goal. It was really amazing long ball from the keeper to free Kylian Mbappé, who went around the Toulouse keeper and then scored in the 7th minute of the match. Tenas there reminded us what we could have if we had a goalkeeper who could kick the ball effectively, but equally he reminded us that there's not many shot stoppers who are better than our usual suspect Gianluigi Donnarumma. Tenas was unable to stop the Toulouse shots. I think Donnarumma would have had a good shout at least in few of them. And I'm not blaming Tenas for those goals, such as they were. The issues were in defense mostly, but there's a chance that the long arm of Donnarumma would have reached at least one or two of them, if not three. All around a lack of spirit and motivation in this match. Very half-hearted effort, but I will take one player who I enjoyed watching, and that was Manuel Ugarte. Early this season, we couldn't get enough of him because it had been a while since we had really a proper defensive midfielder, a proper real number 6, so to speak. And he started the season very strong, but has had some limitations still, and he ended up being sidelined at some point of the season. Now he had a very positive match, so that's something to lean into, and I really hope and trust that the next season, his second season, could be much better. And of course, we will have to see how our midfield is going to look next season anyway. That's something that we don't get too much into in this episode, but in future, I'm sure that is going to also pop up. Otherwise, it was a 3rd defeat in a row. Toulouse beat us 1-3. It's really not great. This was a meaningless match to them, but they went all in. And of course, it was a meaningless match for us also. The team has already won the championship, and in actual fact, they were ready to celebrate it at Parc. All the preparations were in full effect. But perhaps you could also say that there was a meaning in this match for PSG. This was the last home match of the season. Perhaps the fans deserved a little bit better. And then there were these goodbyes. We get into those in a bit. It does also put in perspective just how difficult an invincible season is, even domestically. I mean, we forget how close we could have been because until now we only had one loss in France. Granted, that one defeat early on guaranteed that there won't be an undefeated campaign for us, but I've thought about this many times since. This wouldn't have been far otherwise, but Toulouse gave us the second defeat just to illustrate the season is long. It is long. Just a small sidebar here. It really hits home the magnitude of what Bayer Leverkusen have been able to do so far in Bundesliga and in Europa League. And if they can go all the way in both of those without losing one match, that would be absolutely a huge achievement, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. But we'll see how it's going to go. Either way, they are not our focus here, of course. The match was played, and afterwards it was time for the trophy celebration. Pretty much the annual trophy celebrations. Of course, there are some seasons when it doesn't happen because the trophy is not won by us, but there's certain regularity in this, we could say. Second time in a row, though, PSG celebrated the trophy after a defeat. Not a great thing. I was there 1 year ago at the stadium, and celebrating the trophy after a defeat, fairly sort of like a heartless display. It doesn't feel that great. It doesn't feel that celebratory as it could. There's something both quite cynical and a little bit melancholic as well, as there is beautiful about our trophy celebrations in general. I mean, no points for guessing that they are pretty over-the-top events, but that is how this club does things. There's joy there. There's definitely some joy there, but it's not always immediately apparent. It's difficult to describe this event. It's trying to find closure for the campaign and like even this time say goodbye to some players. But the campaign again isn't done yet. It's unusual that there's still 3 matches left. So we're not quite there, perhaps mentally, to finish the end of the season. Yet this was the last home match. So this is when the celebrations took place. This time the fireworks and video presentation was accompanied by an orchestra that was playing very well, of course, beautifully together, much better than the team before in the match, but eventually the players and the staff came to the stage, and ever the gentleman Marquinhos took the hand of Michel Montana and walked him to lift the trophy with him together. I think this might have been the highlight of the evening for me. It was quite beautiful, and fair play to Michel Montana. Fair play to him. A great gesture from our captain, of course. Mostly a positive night of celebration. A little bit whistling here and there. The recipients for that were Kylian Mbappé, Levin Kursava and Soler. The witness statements vary a little bit depending on whereabouts at the stadium the people had been, what they had heard. But nothing crazy, nothing too disturbing that would have ruined the evening. I think all around we were all quite clear of the realities on the ground, and people were acting accordingly. Mbappe's last match, well, that was undoubtedly the big topic, inescapably so. It was something you simply cannot ignore. Football is a team sport. I always emphasize and highlight that football is a team sport, and it is played. It is won or lost as a team. Usually the best teams win as opposed to the best individuals, unless, of course, those best individuals are part of the best teams. Perhaps the last time PSG has such a dominant individual single player. We will be happy to talk about something else in due time, but you know that this needs looking into. It is finally final. Kylian Mbappé has officially talked to us, like he pointed out that he had promised to when the time comes, and now the time came. Of course, none of this was news, we already knew, but he had made this video and there no longer is any speculation left. He's out of the door after 7 years in the red and blue shirt. Some felt that it was heartfelt. His video message, some said that it was clinical, like a speech by a politician, very calculated, of course, which you'd be excused to think of him as a politician, as he visits presidents and the other dignitaries. And some feel that he has been the best player in the history of clubs. Some feel like he's a fraud and a cheater. I felt like a part of a very small minority there myself. To me, he's neither the hero nor the villain. He's a complicated personality, an amazing but not flawless football player who grew up from a young promise to a global superstar at PSG, which incidentally is his hometown team as well. It's undeniable that his numbers are impressive. No one can deny that. First of all, not many players stay in Paris for 7 years. 307 matches played for PSG. There might be a few more before he goes, but either way, it is the 10th most in the entire club's history. And third most matches in UEFA competitions, that's European football. 96 assists, almost 100, which is third all time for the club, and of course the most goals by a large margin, 56 goals more than the second one, Cavani. And this is a record that will stand for a very long time. There's no doubt about it. No active players anywhere near. So at best, I would say that this record is threatened in 2030s or something like that. I'm happy if it's earlier, but it took him 7 years, and anyone else who could get there has only just started or perhaps even isn't signed yet to Paris. We don't even know if the player to break this record is even born yet, to be honest with you, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that he has been in Paris for a long time. He has scored a lot of goals and has a healthy amount of assists to add on top of that. Now he has been unable to bring the Champions League to Paris, as has, by the way, everyone else in the history of the club. This is why I think that this is a bad time to try and assess his legacy in PSG, because we were hoping for so much better from this spring when somehow it felt possible. We had a good run and we had a good luck in the drawer, so to speak, but his heart wasn't there fully. So it seemed to me, at least. So a lot of people were frustrated, and I include myself in that group also. Kylian Mbappé is not the best team player. He is an individual athlete with an identity of an individual athlete, but in a team sport, it's complicated. That's certainly my reading of it, and that is why I think he has done more or less what he wants. He has his own communication plan, strategy, and probably a department to oversee it. His messages are his messages. His career is his career. Even this video now that he released, his farewell words. It was not made in collaboration with PSG, which is okay, but reportedly PSG didn't even know that he's publishing such, leaving them in a difficult space communications-wise, or even in terms of how to say goodbye in a way that would fit the occasion. I personally, I work in communication and PR to an extent also, and I can promise you that no one in that field, in that department, no one needs this kind of bombshell unannounced without any preparation. Of course, I mean, they would have some preparation for some time, but the specific timing and the nature of it, it's not as simple to react to that in a short span of time. Or certainly you don't consider those people on the same side with you if they put you in this situation that sort of forces you to react almost with reflexes. So, of course, they would have had the plan. Let's not get over the top with that either. Of course, they would have had a long-term plan of how to do it, what to do it, and whatever. But they had also a timeline in their communication. What are they going to communicate? And more importantly, when? So what to us seems like a harmless video message, and perhaps that is all that it is. It's most probably has caused a bit of chaos at La Factory at the PSG headquarters. And from a marketing angle, the fact that it all happened on the same day as launching the next year's home shirt, it wasn't ideal. It was clear which was the bigger headline, of course. If Mbappé would have been more open about it with the club, these videos could have been made in collaboration or at least sort of like synchronized in a way that all messages get out there. And the club could have controlled their own communication at least, but this didn't happen, and I'm not sure if it's that important even. Maybe I'm putting too much focus on it. Mbappé is, of course, allowed to post a video on internet just like you or I, but of course his videos will have more of an impact in the world around us. There are reports now saying that the relationship between Mbappé clan and Nasser Al-Khelaifi is virtually frozen over. Difficult to know precisely, but of course PSG isn't just its president. And I guess in his video, Mbappé thanked absolutely everyone else, except very notably Nasser Al-Khelaifi, who by the way was nowhere to be seen in the trophy celebrations either, which is quite rare. I think he has always sort of been there in the mix. And perhaps he took a calculated step back and allowed things to unfold, which on reflection was probably the best thing for him to do, not to sort of insert him there in the eye of the storm or to pretend that things are nice or whatever they are, and we don't know. All of these are rumors anyway, but just the observation, he was not thanked and he was not part of the celebration. Whatever the meaning behind those things are, that you can think for yourself or what feels like the most likely scenario. This was not about the relationship of the president and Kylian Mbappé the last night as it was, but it was a communion between the player and at least one segment of the fan base, the ultras. But let's get back to his legacy. I stand by what I said, that this is not the best time to assess it. Not at all. It's too soon. There have been too many disappointments, and we will easily focus too much on his recent efforts from this spring. It hasn't been his best. Of course, some reports suggest that he had signed his next deal with a different club as early as in February this year, which he has had every right to do. That's not the point here. But in the meantime, and since that, he hasn't been able to give us all that much, to the club that has been paying him an astronomical salary every month. Then things like throwing the captain's armband, going to watch the match from the executive stand in Monaco, which to me was the height of arrogance. To me, that was pretty unforgivable. Really a mad thing to do, but whatever you feel about any specific incident, it's safe to say that he didn't end with a great effort, which, if he had, could have helped us a little closer to the Champions League trophy, at least to the final, but that wasn't meant to be. And it's a fair question. Has he done what he has been paid to do this season, and especially this spring when he has had his one foot in Spain already? Well, no, he hasn't. I don't think he has, and I don't think that is even a very controversial thing to say. The truth is that he should have probably left back then when he extended a few years ago, at the latest last summer, in order to bring us a transfer fee. Reportedly, he has been making that up by not claiming some loyalty bonus or some such. I don't know the figures or the details of those arrangements, but this had been pretty outrageous contract that PSG had given him at that time. And if he has had any mercy on us, then that's fine, I guess. It's better than nothing. And I think that even from the club's perspective, it's difficult to criticize his arrangement too much, because really the big error had also already happened by us giving him an arm and a leg, so to speak, leading up to that. So we had given him all the power, and then it has been up to him to what extent he's going to give that power back. None of us know what the conversation had been between him and the club, with his people, his parents, his mother, his dad, his agent, whatever, the people around him. There's a structure, there's a whole business around him in many ways, and no one knows what the expectations were. He certainly was playing every last second of football there was on offer until his internal announcement, or what had been reported at least as such. After that, he was substituted off a few times and even sat a few matches on the bench. There was some talk in L'Équipe, so make of that what you will, apparently leaked by some near him, that suggested that this uncertainty of minutes had destabilized him somehow, whatever the specific turn of phrase was. But even sitting out a few matches or coming to the bench with a little bit left to play, he has played an awful lot. His rest overall seems less to me than normal expected rotation in any given season would have been. Perhaps he lost his leverage, but if that will destabilize you, you're going to have to grow up quite a lot in your next job, because those people might not have as much compassion as we have had for 7 years. Some people like to list his errors, and there have been some of them, quite a few. I'm talking about the incident in Monaco this spring, sure. But some take it much further and list everything he has ever done wrong or where he could have been better, score a goal or choose his words more carefully. There are Twitter threads and YouTube compilations made entirely about this. But I find it a bit unkind, if I'm being entirely honest, because you can edit anything you want from 7 years of footage. You can choose to look at the missed shot against Bayern in the final, or a hat-trick at Camp Nou against Barcelona. And perhaps the truth is something in the middle. Or maybe the truth is exactly that he's capable of both of those things. He's neither a god nor the devil. He is to you what you choose to project on him. But that's not really providing a clear picture. At least I feel that viewing him merely through these extremes, it doesn't really provide satisfactory explanation of who he has been for us. It feels like it's more about the person who says it than whom they say it about. Let's talk about that missed shot in the Champions League final, actually, because I think it's a great example. I've been thinking about this a little bit personally. I wouldn't think about it at all, but it comes up quite often, so let's look at it. Basically what happens in 2020 August, I think it was 23rd, Champions League final in Portugal. PSG is playing against Bayern Munich, and Mbappé gets the ball in front of the goal. There are many players there, defenders and our players, and his shot ends up more like passing the ball to Neuer. Well, those are the moments you create greatness or you don't. You make history or you don't. Some have remained stuck in this quite a lot. To me, it was more transient, something that came and went in that moment. There are many situations like that in football. So you could say about this case that he was rushed back from an injury to play in that match after having been on the receiving end of a very nasty tackle in the Coupe de France final before the Champions League final 8 that year in Portugal. Like Perrin ended his professional career in that red card. It was sort of a version of Zidane ending his career with that head. But of course, Perrin is no Zidane and French Cup is no World Cup. But I think that sometimes in these moments that we should remember forever for right reasons, we end up sabotaging ourselves because they are emotionally so complex, perhaps too much to bear. I don't know, and that's not the point. But Kylian Mbappé really got hurt there, and he came into that final, the Champions League final, the first and so far only Champions League final for PSG, probably before he was ready, without match rhythm and full fitness. So you can look at that shot with that in mind. You can also look at it by saying that, well, it was in the middle of almost 12-month stretch that he didn't score one Champions League goal, not even one. That try spell was only ended later that autumn when Neymar gave him a penalty to shoot in a group stage match against Istanbul Başakşehir. Neymar himself scored a hat-trick in that match and carried us through that difficult group stage as it was. And after that, Mbappé came back with the Camp Nou hat-trick, but there was that time when he was unable to score. So even that shot, that one shot, missed opportunity that would have potentially changed all trajectories, even that can be painted in any color that you want it to be. And if we would have won that match, that trophy, he would have possibly already left before now. So personally, I try not to problematize people's personalities. We all have them, and none of them are that easy to live with, I'd argue. Certainly no one here is perfect, and perfection is not what we can require from anybody. But there's a list of things that haven't always worked out, and of course people can feel touchy about this because his salary in Paris has been such that the expectations have been extreme also, equally high. I choose to look at things through more compassionate lens perhaps and focus on the good things that has been experienced together, and I think there's been many great moments. I think we all deserve this to be over now. From here on in, we must never allow a player to assume so much power and such position that they can feel like they might be bigger than the club. We should aim to hire players who are giving their all to the team and not scan around other options constantly. Is there something better on offer? We have great players who want to play for us. We need more of that. This is not a stepping stone. Let me illustrate the idea of stepping stone. This is a small example. I have been working in radio for most of my adult life, sometimes full-time, sometimes just doing bits and bobs on the side, but I'm a radio guy. That's what I love doing. And when you work in radio, and this was especially true sort of 10, 20 years ago, I think it still has some truth to it, you would have a lot of people who would come to work in radio because it was a logical stepping stone to work in TV where they really wanted to be. It kind of makes sense, but those people never really gave their all for the medium that I love. It was very frustrating. And same with Kylian Mbappé. He has given us a lot more than these people, of course, but he has always had his eyes somewhere else. That's my interpretation of these years that he has spent with us. It has been one part of the plan to get to the end of his career, whatever that means. At least a handful of these years has been like that. Perhaps the early ones, we shouldn't say that it's been like this for 7 years, because maybe it has been like this for 4 years. Maybe it has been like this for 5 years. But nevertheless, there has been this thing. We have all felt that. We have all observed that, I'm sure. He's a great player. He's a very complicated character. A politician. That was the term that I had mentioned already earlier, and this is a term that had been mentioned also online and various other conversations. And he is a little bit like politician in that he has sort of secured the support of one key demographic, a key group in particular. He has made sure to always be on the right side of the ultras, and ultras decide the atmosphere at Parc, so that's pretty clever. And ultras are not a monolith group. They don't all agree on everything. They also have different groups under the general umbrella banner of CUP, Collective Ultras Paris. But it seems very much that he has made the right connections there. And in that regard, he doesn't have to worry if Nasser Al-Khelaifi has him in his good books. Is Kylian Mbappé the best player who has ever played for Paris? Thierry Henry thinks so. That's what he said on CBS. I think it's both impossible and also unnecessary to say. There are players who have been there during different eras and with different resources available. They've been there for a different duration and played different positions. How do you compare? Bernat Lama, Thiago Silva, or some players like that. How do you compare them to players who score a lot of goals? And about those players who score a lot of goals, both Zlatan and Neymar have numbers in the same ballpark as Mbappé in terms of goals per match played. But Zlatan, would he have been able to keep it up for 7 years? Perhaps. You can never rule it out, really. And Neymar's issue, of course, isn't goals per match. It is matches in 6 seasons, the constant injuries. He might have been the technically most able player, yet very fragile. Maybe the most technically able player that I have seen in Paris. Really wonderful football player. Another complicated character. I've talked about him before. There's a full episode dedicated to all of that talk. So you can scroll back the feed, the archives to find that if you want. I think it must have been from last August or so. Of course, Neymar also was not a fan favorite always. But there was also something about him that when he was playing, when he was on the pitch and when he was playing, he had a pretty good heart to play for us, and he was delivering. There were times when he was really carrying us. And Zlatan made us dream. And was he a team player? He was team player in that sense that he raised the level of the entire squad around him. You could even make an argument that his teammates were scared to not perform, not to deliver. It was pretty frightening to let him down. Nobody wanted to go into the locker room if it hadn't gone as well as it should have. But he also left as a free agent, and then he hasn't had almost anything nice to say about us since he left. I don't know if you have noticed. Whenever he's talking about us, he isn't really saying nice things. And compared to Zlatan, Kylian Mbappé has made a long commitment to us. Well, he has been in Paris for a long time. The issue, I guess, is his commitment. I mean, there's commitment in other sense of the word, just the duration. How committed has he been? He has been constantly on a lookout, seeking that perfect moment to leave. And it feels like it has been taking for quite a few years that we've been in this thing, that he has been here, contractually obliged, yes, but has he been committed, fully committed, or has he been always sort of like thinking, oh, what if? And I don't think that we have ever been under the impression that he was ever really fully happy with us as his long-term solution. I don't know if there ever was one moment when he thought that what if I finished and did my whole season at PSG? I don't know. There's a chance, maybe, for a small brief moment, but I think in a big picture, I think he has had his career planned out, and I don't think part of that plan has been staying in Paris until he retires. And there are also many other great players. I mean, it's not just, Zlatan and Neymar and Mbappé. Of course, there's so many other players. And some of them are from the era that I sort of find difficult to analyze because I didn't see them week in, week out. But I think it's far too early to talk about Kylian Mbappe's legacy. Like I said, it's also not necessary. And it's not even clear what the criteria is to be the best ever in Paris, because it just can't be the goals either. And it's not important to ever decide. In my opinion, football is a team sport, but the beauty of it for us fans and enthusiasts alike is that it really exists for us in these conversations, in these debates. We enjoy the players who divide opinions because we like to talk about them, and they will give us the opportunity to do so. A player who has the power to make us feel great will also have the power to hurt us, to upset us. And for now, we lick our wounds a bit in terms of how it all ended. And perhaps later down the line, we will have more coherent analysis. I am glad that we managed to finish things off more or less amicably. May this trauma never knock on our door again. But at the same time, we know that it will, most probably one way or another, and we will deal with it then again like so many other times before that. That's that, looking backwards to try to understand life so far lived. But the future is what we aim for with all these lessons, and that leads me to ask the question, what's happening with Xavi Simons? In 2022, Xavi Simons was supposed to extend his contract with PSG. That was what all the reports were saying. And then after that, go for a loan for one season with PSV in the Netherlands. Somehow, despite all the reports at the time, he didn't extend, but rather signed his full contract as a free agent with the Dutch side. According to the rumors, he was advised by former PSV player himself and at the time PSG teammate Gini Wijnaldum. It was devastating. It really was. I remember how upsetting it was at the time. But even more bizarre was that later it was reported that there's some clause in his contract, some voluntary stipulation that PSG could buy him back on a specific time for a specific and very low price in the following summer. It was very odd because he had gone there as a free agent, so PSG didn't need to have any part to play in any of this. There was no need to have PSG mentioned in the contract. So you would assume that Simons had added this clause there to serve him. It was part of some plan. PSG bought him back with his own approval, of course, but he didn't have even a layover in Paris when he moved to Leipzig, where he had already arranged his next loan season. It has been this season now coming to an end, and his contract with us is until 2027, so there's still some years to play. There's been so many contradictory reports about his destiny for the whole season, and even now there are a few of them. It seems clear to me that he has negotiated himself a lot of leverage with these deals, certainly some. This is what I mean when I say that when he was signing the contract with PSV, there was no reason that he had to include PSG in any way in that. That was his choice, and for him to do that, probably have had some kind of arrangement with PSG that when this time comes, then PSG is must give him some leverage, must allow him to make his own choices, his own decisions. That certainly seems like the most likely case, in my opinion. He's one of those new young players, the new generation with a very strong vision of his own career. A bit like Kylian Mbappé. He's used to living under media coverage from a very young age. I don't think that this confusion around his deals, around his arrangement, potential loan deals, return, coming back, all of that stuff, buyback clauses, I don't think it's coincidence because Xavi Simons comes from the Mino Raiola school of football business. Xavi and his people are playing 3D chess with the clubs and us and the media. What will happen? Perhaps only he will know. And I did say clubs. I do mean clubs, but I really hope that one of them is not PSG. We obviously should have fairly open lines of communication with him since he's on our payroll. I'm hoping for Xavi to join the team in the summer to be ready for the new season, and I'm excited about it, genuinely excited about it. He's a massively exciting player, but this I say for future purposes. If there's one player who could end up being a sort of rerun of this Kylian Mbappé drama, that is Xavi Simons, because he too is a former prodigy. Still a young man, of course, whose football ambitions has been clear early on. That means that the football structure has tagged along from teenage years onwards, and the amount of career planning that's taken place, I can only imagine what it has been. I don't necessarily think that he's planning on staying in Paris forever. If he comes now, it's up to our team to convince him to stay longer, and if he ends up giving us a good couple of seasons, well then we must take that and also perhaps be ready to sell him for a huge transfer fee if that opportunity arises. That was the error that we made with Kylian Mbappé. Let's not make that again. PSG women made it to the final of D1 Division 1, where they will play for the championship trophy against Lyon on next Friday. This league, D1, has got a new system that they're trying out where after the regular season, the top 4 teams play the semi-finals, and in those, PSG beat the local rivals, Paris FC. In the end, on penalties, it was a bit of a poorly refereed match, some significant errors there despite VAR, but in the end, I don't mind too much because we made it, if only just. After Coupe de France victory, PSG has got a chance to win the domestic double. It won't be easy, but it's possible. And what the top 2 finish also will mean is that there is guaranteed Champions League football next season. Not guaranteed group stages, because quite shockingly, France only gets one team directly on that level, but we have to qualify there as so many times before. I would absolutely love for PSG to beat Lyon in that final. That'd be really great, but we will wait and see. On Wednesday, PSG will travel to Nice to play the Ligue 1 match that was postponed because of the European nights earlier. That might be a tough one if we can't find the spark of motivation once more, because Nice is playing matches that decide whether they will play in Champions League qualifiers next season, Europa League, Conference League, or even not at all in Europe. So they've got a lot to play for, and we need to figure out the mentality so we can end this campaign with the right kind of results. And of course, there is a whole entire Coupe de France final to play, so an important trophy is still on the line. Between those matches, we are also playing relegation battle match, so still some football left before we wrap up the domestic season. PSG women, like said, played the D1 final on Friday at Parc OL. Thanks for being with me on PSG Review. My name is Mikko, and next time more PSG topics to cover as we limp towards the end of another season and get ready to start a new chapter. Until that, peace.